Good Friday morning, friends, and welcome back for another episode of the Finding God in the Dark podcast. My name is Don,
My name is Jonathan.
and John and I this week watched a film that John recommended on Netflix called Voicemails for Isabel.
Mhm.
You'll see the background there on Jonathan's side.
Yep.
It is a 2026 Netflix
Yep.
film.
Yep.
It's a romantic comedy. Um, I'm I think that this film was very self-aware in that at one point it called itself what was it the Tom Hanks film You've
Yeah.
Got Mail.
You've got
It,
mail. Yeah.
I think it's a Timu You've Got Mail, but
Yeah. Well, there's a
gonna
couple times they clearly tongue in cheek talk about romantic comedy tropes. You know,
yeah,
one
yeah.
point,
So
one of the characters turns to one of the lead characters and says, "This is now when you run."
it's
Like,
about when
so
you
it's
run,
like,
yeah. Yeah, okay. I don't think I've been less clear. I'm not a fan of
yeah.
romantic comedies.
Hmm.
Not my thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so, obviously, I have less interest in this than I would, most of the films we look at.
Yeah.
That's fair. We take turns. That's why we take turns picking movies.
And I push you, you push me.
Exactly. And trust me, I've already got one picked out for this week. So, anyway, um, it was a cute film. I will
Yeah.
give it that. There were a lot of moments where I felt like it really felt like, okay, let me put it this way. In my household, my wife gets up very early, which means she goes to bed very early.
Yeah.
And she falls asleep with the TV on. And a lot of times I'll come upstairs, she's got on the Hallmark Channel.
Hmm.
And this felt like a Hallmark Channel movie.
Hmm.
It really did. It kind of felt like that, kind of schmaltzy, cheesy.
Yeah. So much.
So nonetheless, I'll give it credit. There was enough emotional gravitas to engage.
Yeah.
So where do you want to go, John?
Well, what I thought would be interesting for us to talk about is this really talked about dealing with grief and how
Yes.
people process grief. And that's something that we bring up and we talk about. And I just thought it'd be interesting to look at it from a romantic comedy perspective, because usually movies about grief are really, really, really
Heavy.
heavy and they're
Yeah.
hard to watch and they're emotionally draining. And this wasn't, but at the same time it took seriously the idea of grief. And I don't know, I found it really interesting kind of reflecting on it. I wouldn't be surprised. I didn't do any research about how the people that created this movie created it, but this seems like a very Gen Z millennial thing to do, kind of sending voicemails to persons who have left, who have died, and kind of connecting with them that way, or saving emails from people who have died. The main character, um, Jill, she loses her sister,
Mhm.
and she keeps all of her emails and regularly listens to them, and then also calls her her sister who's passed and leaves her kind of updates about her life. And I don't know, I just thought it would be interesting to talk about because I've never seen that kind of thing happen in a movie yet, but I would guess a lot of people do those kind of things when they lose somebody.
Yeah, we talk about this, I'd imagine, a lot as clergy, because we deal directly with people who are grieving and
Yeah.
loss. And I couldn't tell you how many times I have said everyone grieves differently.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own process. There's no two people are going to go through this the exact same way. And this is an interesting take on how one processes their own grief.
Yeah.
Um, I, look, I admit it. I'm the last year of the boomers. Okay. This is not going to be me. I'm not going to do that. Like for me, when I'm feeling that I'm looking at pictures and I'm,
Yeah.
dredging up old memories and stuff I'm not acting like they're still listening to me,
Yeah.
which okay, for me, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me. That feels a little psychotic. That feels a little therapy worthy, you know? So,
Yeah, I don't know if I'd label it that, but I understand kind of the kind of struggling with it. I think for our kids and future generations, the phone is a lot like the phone is still a tool for us. I think for my kids and your kids probably and future generations, it's kind of an appendage, you know, for better or worse. There's some better with it and there's definitely some worse with it as well. But to me, I think it would be very natural for my kids to save emails from someone that they really loved and play them back at least, and I could see them using the phone to kind of, connect with the person that they had often texted and, emailed.
it's interesting because I heard it on I think it was just this morning, I heard it on a podcast that someone said that the way that people talk to one another on the internet, like
Yeah,
no one talks to another, like talk to a complete stranger
yeah,
in real life like that.
yeah,
Like you meet people in real life and you're just, friendly, and then, you find somebody you disagree with on social media or something, and it's a fight.
yeah,
And nobody does that in real life, except that so many of particularly younger people
yeah,
are so immersed in social media, and
yeah.
that i- i- is this a contributing factor to where we are as a society, and so polarized. It's funny because if you take that to what you and I do
Yeah.
with this podcast, and it kind of makes you wonder, like, are we a dying breed? Like, is
Yeah.
this not possible for our kids and our grandkids or whatever? Well, I don't have grandkids, but you know what I mean. For younger generations, this is just not going to happen. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, one of the other things I don't know, I thought was interesting is I have several um members over my tenure as pastor at different places that they regularly went to usually it was a spouse, but they regularly went to their spouse's grave
Hmm.
and they would talk to them. They would, essentially kind of use that as a connection point.
Hmm.
And sometimes they would express guilt to me because they viewed that as kind of this Catholic or Orthodox thing, and they were Protestant, you know, and and what I think is interesting is as much as Protestants struggle with praying, and I guess I shouldn't say praying to the saints. We're really asking for their intercession. At least if we're gonna if we're gonna steel man the Catholic and Orthodox understanding of what you do, you don't pray in the sense you would pray to Jesus, but you ask the person, usually a saint, but ask the person for them to pray for you or for them to kind of lift up your cares to God. Um, but I have found a lot of Protestants in my experience really struggle with that desire after someone's gone to still have that connection.
Yeah.
And part of the tradition, both, the just Christian tradition in general, is this idea that when you die and are in the beatific vision, when you die and you're in God's presence, you are more alive than you ever have been. And so, I think we as clergy could do a better job helping people recognize that there's nothing wrong with feeling like your loved one still cares about you, that your loved one is still kind of on some level present with you, that
Hmm.
and I think we would be better served to let people be okay with going to a gravesite and talking to somebody or you know
I
or
certainly don't feel like that's a problem. I don't think it should be an issue. My my wife oftentimes, particularly like wintertime,
yeah,
if a cardinal shows up in the bush outside the window, she thinks it's her father,
yeah,
coming to visit. And hey, what do I know? Maybe it is. I don't understand that realm.
Yeah,
I have the same vision that any other mortal person has,
yeah,
so maybe, I mean, we could have the same discussion about, spirits in general, right? Um, yeah, okay, this is not a surprise to most folks who know. My wife as a hobby, is a paranormal investigator.
yeah,
Maybe. I don't know. It's
yeah,
not my thing. I don't go on ghost hunts with her, but yeah,
yeah,
I don't say it's not possible.
yeah,
And that's part of the problem is that I think particularly if we're going to go, the aisles, my side of the aisle, the
yeah,
conservative Christian side of the aisle tends to want to rule out anything but.
yeah,
But I can't, I'm not there. Like, I don't know. And I'm willing to say I don't know. And maybe that's the hard part. Maybe for some folks, it's hard to say, I don't know. I think this film, and circling back to the film, I think this film does a really interesting job of that because even at the end, the boyfriend who had been getting the premise for those who haven't seen the film is she's leaving these voicemails for her deceased sister, and this guy is getting them, and
yeah.
he's listening to them, and
Because
he
he's got
falls
a
in
new
love with
phone for
her.
work and he's gotten the number.
Right,
And so he gets them and then kind of essentially falls in love with the Jill character through her
right,
leaving these emails or
right.
voicemails.
But the I think the interesting part, to go back to that, who really knows the
Yeah,
spiritual realm, is that at the end he recognizes that and he leaves a voicemail
yeah,
for Isabel, which I
yeah,
think is kind of a cute nod to,
yeah,
no, they really know, you
yeah,
know.
yeah,
So
yeah,
what else? I think you're right. Grief is a huge element in this film,
yeah. I mean,
particularly for Jill's
yeah.
character.
I don't know. I really enjoyed the fact that they were willing to really explore grief and not bring a lot of judgment
Yeah.
to how people were doing it. And I think that's nice in a lighthearted comedy. Like to recognize that life is messy, I think is nice.
Hmm.
Like, one of the things though that's a big theme of this movie is relationship ethics. Um,
Yeah.
it's a theme really throughout.
Yeah.
And I think pastors have a tendency to avoid conversations around relationships a lot. And we would do better served to be willing to kind of wade into those waters more, I think.
I think the sense for us is like you don't want to be seen as trying to tell people how to live their lives,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Except the challenge with that is that isn't that exactly what Jesus did?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
go ahead, but you were saying relationship ethics.
Yeah.
It's not you. Obviously, the very obvious one is like he's getting these voicemails and then he's using them to kind of leverage a relationship
Yeah.
with this woman, with Jill,
Yes.
and she doesn't know that he has been listening to her voicemails that she left for her sister.
Yeah.
So, what is the ethic on that? And in a way, he pays a price for that
Yeah.
during the film.
And then there's a
But
there's a there's a side kind of piece of this where she starts to kind of engage with a relationship influencer, and
that,
then
that
he
one's funny.
he ghosts her, and then she takes it upon herself to go to one of his live events and basically kind of hold him up as a fraud, you know. And it's a very funny scene. It's a very kind of endearing kind of Zoe Deutsch, I think is her last name. I really like her personality as an actress, and those moments really came through, and I think it's easy to root for her, connect to her kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
that scene is easily the funniest scene in the film.
yeah,
It really is.
yeah. But I don't know. This is where, I tell people all the time that Christians, if you're truly trying to follow Jesus, you're not going to be straight down the line conservative or straight down the line liberal. Those things were created long after Jesus existed, and so how he
Yeah.
engaged with life don't fit neatly into our political spectrum that we created about 200 years ago. Like,
Ju- I just saw something like that on Facebook today where somebody said, somebody
yeah,
had chalked on the ground, Jesus was a liberal. And then one
yeah,
of the responses to that was that they this conservative guy said, well, the fact of the matter is Jesus was no more liberal than he was conservative,
yeah,
and that he held views that we would today consider on both sides of the aisle. And I thought it was really profound. Like this guy just laid it out
yeah,
completely. This sounded like a pastor's answer, you
yeah.
know?
No, I mean,
Um,
honestly, Jesus, if you just kind of take how he's presented in the Gospels, there are positions he would have held that would have not allowed him to be elected on the Republican ticket or on the Democratic ticket.
right,
Just that's the case, that's the reality of it. You
right.
know, but one of the why I say that is I really struggle with where a lot of progressive people go with sexuality. And I think, to be very honest, you have to recognize that the early church thought sexual ethics mattered
Hmm.
and sexual ethics were important. And I can turn to like something in First Corinthians 7, where Paul gives advice that you or I would never give to a married couple, which is basically, if you're not married, don't get married, because it's better to stay single. I've never given that advice. My guess is you've never
Not,
given that advice.
no,
And so we have to recognize that Paul and the Bible in general gives advice that we would never give today, because we
right,
recognize either it's bad advice or the contextual reality has changed. You
right.
know, at the same time, I really do struggle with a lot of people in progressive Christianity that just want to kind of say sexual ethics don't matter as long as both the people involved want to be involved. And I really struggle with that, because I do think, I mean, one good example is the PCUSA was recently debating if the wording around sexuality should be you have to be in a committed monogamous relationship. And there were progressive Christians in that denomination saying that that was really harmful to people and that the denomination shouldn't approve it. And I don't know where that went, but I was like, I'm progressive and I have a problem with saying that. Like, I just do. You know, I feel like the church, both the conservative wing and the progressive wing, need to be better about having real complicated conversations about sex and relationship and ethics. I really do. Um,
I guess the hardest part of that is that at some point we have to draw the line. We have
yeah,
to draw a line somewhere
yeah,
at some point.
yeah,
And no one, you're never going to get everyone to agree on where to draw the line.
yeah,
So wherever you end up,
yeah,
there's always going to be controversy. Look, this is where we are in the UMC right now.
yeah,
We
yeah,
drew a line, and some people said, well, that's too far for me, and so I'm leaving.
yeah,
Other people said it's not far enough. We need to do more.
yeah.
You know, and then there's those of us like you and I who stand somewhere in the middle and go, like, what?
Well,
What are we doing?
yeah.
You know,
I mean, I think that
like at the
it,
very least, we're not
yeah,
united
yes.
anymore. You know,
It's hard for me. It's hard to run away from the idea that a foundational image of Jesus is uh, a foundational image of the church is this idea of a wedded relationship to Christ and Christ alone,
hmm,
and kind of lifting up this idea of monogamy, lifting up this idea of it's you and me. And the church and scripture, but the tradition developed to say when two people get married, that's supposed to be something that points to that greater connection between Christ and Christ's church, right? And um, I have a hard time pulling away from monogamy because that's the found to me that's the foundational piece in that is this idea that we're supposed to model this idea that two people come together like the church and Christ has come together, you know. And again, even though I'm very progressive, the stuff that you often see in these movies of people like it's no big deal to have sex with somebody. It's no big deal to like basically essentially at one point Jill has sex with somebody because she's bored. Essentially that's you know that's essentially what why she has sex with somebody. And there's a part of me as even a progressive pastor that wants to say, I don't think that's a good idea.
You know, I was going to say, as we're talking about this, that's one of the things I was going to say is that, you know, that was one of the drawbacks for me was that, in a sense, the main character, you know, all right, I'm going to go a little bit on my conservative side, but
Sure.
you know, she's this strong woman, don't need no man
Yeah,
who, you know, she's just going to sleep around because she can.
yeah,
Not good. First of all, that's not good for her.
yeah,
More importantly than anything else, that you may think that's empowering, it's not.
yeah,
It makes you value yourself less,
yes.
right?
Mhm.
But you know, like with this guy who's in her class, and with this, you know, relationship guy, and then, you know, it's like, settle down, girl.
Yeah. Well, what I thought was interesting, and they didn't go um like hard at this, but what I thought was interesting was the two people in the movie that she kind of slept with very quickly. Um, she had really negative consequences she had to deal with, and I like the fact that the movie at least recognized on some level, right, that sleeping around can get you into some issues you don't want to get into.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's fair. I'll give it that.
yeah.
It was still, for me at least, it was still uncomfortable. It's like, yeah, you just went on one date with that guy.
Yeah.
Like, really? You
Well, I
know?
mean,
I mean,
yeah,
as a guy, when I was younger, I've been
yeah,
married 35 years, so, you know, but, you know, when I would go on a date, I didn't expect that on the first date. I mean,
yeah.
come on.
Well, again, like I've gotten used to, maybe I shouldn't have, but like the near, they don't actually have sex, but the near interaction between Jill and Wes, the two main characters,
Right.
that didn't bother me because that has now become so commonplace in romantic comedies that you're like, okay, you
Yeah.
know. But you know, I'll be honest, the time that she sleeps with her class or her basically the person that's in the chef, she's not really class, but working in the restaurant with her, she literally has sex with him because she's bored. I mean, that's literally why she has sex with him.
Yeah.
You know, and you're just like, really? We had to do that? Like we couldn't connect it to a, you know, anything else? Like, okay.
Is that a good reason? I mean, you know, look, usually this maybe been my lifelong health problem. When I'm bored, I eat. So
Yeah.
you know,
You know, and again, I liked the fact that the person that she ends up with, right? They never have sex on screen. They also have these wonderful moments that aren't sexual, but they are connective. You know,
it's relationship building.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, there's one time where he puts her to bed because she's fallen asleep, and he sleeps on the couch, and then she comes and kind of cuddles into him.
Hmm.
Um, and what I liked about it was it didn't turn into a makeout session that you assumed led to sex. It was just like, I want to be close to you. I want to connect with you. I want to have you wrap me up in your arms. And to me, that is relationship building. It's not simply about a sexual act.
So just reflecting back to another film that I can't stop thinking about and continue to talk about and
Yeah,
see videos about.
yeah.
Um, and you probably know where I'm going right now.
I'm guessing.
Was this a romance or a love story?
Yeah, yeah,
And you know what film I'm talking about. And
yeah,
I will bring that up later, friends. You'll see. But
yeah,
yeah, that's the it's almost like the first two relationships, if you want to call them
yeah,
that, are I don't know, are they the romance and then Wes is the love story? You
yeah,
know, I think
yeah,
um it's I don't know, it's interesting.
yeah.
What else, John? What else?
One thing as a person with a disability, one critique I would give of this movie, and again, maybe I wanted to talk about this movie because of kind of these larger things that are less in the movie than what I wanted to just talk about you with. But to me, that again, that's sometimes what we do with movies.
Right.
We lift stuff out so we can have a larger discussion with somebody we want to have.
Hmm.
But one critique I would give this movie is I didn't like the fact that as a person with disability, Isabella was kind of like she has no life other than Jill. Like, you know, and I recognize with the serious disease she had and the reality that she was probably often confined to home, especially when she had a flare up, she would not have the same life somebody would have that didn't have it, obviously. But I wish they would have shown maybe her in a relationship or breaking up in a relationship or having an online relationship with somebody or seeking that out. They constantly kind of went like, oh, she's just trying to live through Jill. They
I was
even
going to
say
say
that at one point. Yeah,
living vicariously through
yeah.
her sister, which
They
then,
even specifically say that one time. And I recognize that people with disabilities sometimes do that, but it made her feel really one-dimensional in a way that I feel like if they would have flushed that out, I think you might have felt her more rounded and maybe been more impacted when she died early on in the film.
yeah, honestly, she's Isabel could have been a cardboard cutout,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um, I mean, particularly in the beginning of the film, you get the whole setup between her and Jill and
yeah,
the relationship they had as sisters, but there's nothing to Isabel except her disease.
yeah.
Which,
She's a plot point.
yeah,
Yeah,
she's reduced to a plot point, which, let's be honest, that's not good for character development. That's
no,
not,
no.
that's not good. That's not good writing.
Like I even thought about the fact that they could have really they had all the emails, or oh, sorry, all the voicemails they had from Isabel that she listened to. Most of them were silly and kind of, like basically very surface kind of things.
Mhm.
I think it would have been great. I would have loved to seen it. Like, have a 4-minute monologue, voicemail, where she left a really long voicemail about how much her sister meant to her, or how much she was, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, or when her parents, Jill and Isabel's parents, give Jill Isabel's college fund to do something with, it would have been nice to say, we talked about this with Isabel and she wrote you a note and had, have this kind of note that, you hear Isabel's voice as Jill looks through this note. I don't know, those kind of moments I feel like were missed that could have been really impactful. At least in my head, they could have been impactful.
Yeah. The question there is, then how much more time would you be adding to a film that, it's not it's not an epic, it's not
Yeah,
fleshed out,
yeah,
it's a romantic comedy. So,
yeah. I mean,
I get it.
they were clearly going for the 90-minute sweet spot, and I get
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah. So anyway, I think we're getting a little close to time. We should probably wrap this up.
sure.
As I said, it's a cute film.
Yeah,
It's got some ups, it's got some things that, maybe you might find objectionable. We don't tell you your tastes. We tell you what we think. So if
yep,
you're interested in what we think, keep watching.
yeah,
But that being said, we need to move on to what we'll watch for next week. Now, I had mentioned a film we've watched recently. I made reference to it. I'm sure, John, you know the film I'm thinking of is Obsession.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, that has been one of the most impactful films of the last year or so.
Oh yeah.
Um, like what it came out in May, I think.
Yeah.
It what I just heard was compared to budget, percentage wise compared to budget is now the highest grossing film ever
Yeah.
because its budget was under $1 million and it's made over $350 million.
Yeah.
So yeah, 350 times its budget.
There you go.
That's pretty good.
They made their
Um
money back.
yeah, they sure have. And I every single day I go to YouTube, I get suggested some other video
Mhm.
pulling apart that film.
Yeah, yeah.
That is how much it has impacted, popular culture and discussion right now. Um, and I have referred to it. I'm getting to where the film I picked. I referred to it as one of the most effective films I have seen in the last 10 or 15 years. If
Yes.
horror films, effective horror films.
Yeah, yeah.
And I like, not my favorite genre, but I like horror films. And so I thought, well, what was the last horror film that I saw that was that effective?
Mhm.
And so I'm going to suggest a film that was adapted for the screen and directed by Frank Darabont
Okay.
from a Stephen King novella
Mhm.
called The Mist.
Oh yes. Yeah, yeah.
It's a monster movie, but it also a very effective sort of apocalyptic horror movie.
It is, yeah. It is very good. Yes.
Yeah. So why don't we take a look at The Mist this week?
Okay.
And we will talk about that next week. For those of you who have not seen it and are following along and maybe want to watch it, I'm going to suggest keep your eyes on certain characters. Mrs. Carmody is one of them, played by Marcia Gay Harden. Um, she's going to have to be, I think, a core element of our discussion next week
Yeah.
because she drives the film in a way that you wouldn't expect. So I will leave it at that. Um, so that's going to be all for this week, friends. As far as voicemails for Isabel, up to you. We've given you our opinions. Next week's film is The Mist. Until next Friday, assuming that I actually get the film edited and out by Friday, which hasn't happened the last 2 weeks. Sorry, but until next Friday, friends, keep on finding God in the dark. We'll see you all next week. Take care and God bless. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again for watching the Finding God in the Dark podcast, friends. If you've made it here all the way to the end of the video, then obviously you find something that we're doing to be educational or informative, something valuable in this podcast. So we want to invite you to go ahead and share this with your friends. Hit the like button. Follow us for more of this. We publish every week at 10 a.m. on Friday mornings on YouTube. Shortly thereafter, you'll find us somewhere on Facebook. Until next Friday, keep on finding God in the dark. Thanks for watching. Bye now.